All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Jim Davis. I'm one of the senior wealth managers here at Aspen Wealth Management. We're excited for you guys to be here this afternoon. I've got my colleague Candace Scholes on the call as well. You can probably see Candace. She's happy to introduce herself right now also.
Hi, I'm Candace. I'm the head of financial planning here at Aspen Wealth Management. I'm glad that y'all can join us. Social security is such a pivotal topic for all of those that are nearing retirement. And so um, I'm glad that we were able to put this together. And John, I apologize. Jim is going to kick us off today.
Thank you. And if you guys are familiar with I can't talk today. That's a good time to not be able to talk. But if you are familiar with webinars, great. If this is your first time attending one, thank you for taking the time. At the top of your screen, or if you're on a mobile app on the bottom of your screen, you might see different buttons or icons to select, one of which says Q&A. Feel free at any point in time to either click the little hand icon that says like raise your hand, or the Q&A button. We'd be happy to answer any questions y'all have throughout this presentation. So we're going to be respectful of y'all's time, and we're going to go ahead and get started here. More people will be trickling in, but this will be available as a recording after this presentation. So feel free afterwards to circle back with us, ask any questions. Towards the end, we will open it up for Q&As, or along the way, you can kind of raise your hand, and Candace and myself are able to kind of, I guess, turn your mic on and let you speak accordingly. But we'll definitely save some time at the end for questions, and we'll be excited to talk to you then as well. So as Candace kind of touched on at the beginning, at Aspen Wealth Management, all of y'all know we're a comprehensive financial planning firm. We look at tax returns, we look at investment statements, we look at portfolios. But one of the key components for a lot of retirees is Social Security. Common questions we get all the time is, when should I take Social Security? Like, how will it be taxed? Like, are there combinations of myself and my spouse being able to take it? Or I worked as a teacher, or I had a pension, and how does that affect my Social Security? So today we're going to be talking about Social Security, and really how do we squeeze as much of it as we can out of the system. So because it's such a crucial part of people's retirement, we're going to kind of break down how it works, how to make the most of its benefits, and ultimately give you guys a successful retirement. We'll also be talking about the history and purpose of Social Security, the retirements to qualify, maybe how those benefits are calculated, and different options you have when you start collecting them. We'll also talk about some strategies to maximize them over your lifetime, how to maybe coordinate them with other sources of income, how does it impact your taxes, and hopefully we squeeze all that into 1 hour. So like we kind of touched on a little bit, I like to kind of go back to the beginning. What is Social Security? How did it get started? So we're going to talk about the history for just a quick moment. In the 1930s, we're kind of in the heart of the Great Depression. Americans faced a lot of hardships, economic hardships. So what Franklin Roosevelt at the time did was he signed into act the Social Security Act in 1935 as part of what they call the New Deal Initiative. And so Social Security operates, as many of you know, kind of as a pay-as-you-go system. If you're not familiar with that system, it's kind of like a pension, insofar as businesses and employees contribute a portion of your earnings. Currently, that tax rate's 15.3%. We'll kind of touch on this here in a little bit, but out of every paycheck you've had, if you're an employee, you've probably seen that FICA tax or that federal withholding. And really what that represents is about 7.65% of your paycheck gets socked away for Social Security. About 3% combined goes to Medicare, about 12% goes to Security, and you break that up between you and an employer. If you're self-employed, you pay all 15% and some change. And many of our self-employed folks on this call know that, and that's why we do things like S Corps and what have you. So by and large, Social Security is a pay-as-you-go system. We're all putting money into the pot so it can kind of perpetuate and kick itself down the road. These contributions that you put in are paying for the current day retirees. When those workers themselves retire, they receive benefits supported by the contributions by the next generation. And this kind of intergenerational funding or revolving door maintains the program's sustainability, and it ensures kind of support for future retirees. You also are aware of how medical advancements and lifestyles have significantly increased our lifespan. It's remarkable to think, as you can kind of see on this chart, that a couple reaching 65 years old has a 50% chance of living into their 90s and a 25% chance of living into their late 90s. So statistically speaking, at least one person from a couple is likely to live into their 90s. Despite long life expectancy, though, many people are not considering longevity when making decisions about Social Security. which, when people had a lifespan of 75 or 80 years old, it was one thing. But with people living to their 90s, it becomes a really important part of their retirement plan. In fact, if you can kind of see here on this slide, 65% of people collect Social Security benefits today at reduced amounts because they collect them early, as often as age 62. So why, I guess, in the face of longevity, do people collect that early? Well, because they can. It's as simple as going online and clicking a few buttons. Even though many people are concerned with longevity, they're still willing to accept reduced benefits for life to avoid not getting their fair share of benefits if they die early. You often hear people say, like, "Oh, I've paid money long enough. I want to get it out," and that's fine and good if you live until 70 or maybe your early 70s. But if you really want to get as much out of the system, it's often recommended to wait until your full retirement age, or there's some other strategies we'll talk about later in the presentation. The point of this is longevity, kind of this slide and the prior slide, as you can kind of see here, longevity is a reality. At the end of 2021, there were nearly 2.2 million people at the age of 90 collecting Social Security. And I thought this was shocking. At the end of 2021, there was 72,000 people over the age of 100 still collecting Social Security benefits. So longevity is a very real thing that we factor into our financial plans. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a few minutes to dive into the nuts and bolts of individual benefits. Candace is going to touch on later kind of couple benefits and how to strategize and maybe do some different income strategies. But I'm going to talk for a few minutes about individual benefits, how they're constructed, where are these numbers derived from, and kind of the mechanics behind looking at your Social Security and where that money comes from and how do you get to the numbers you're at today. As we kind of touched on, most workers pay into Social Security, and they'll qualify for benefits at retirement. This is called a FICA tax. Like we talked about, it's 15.3%, 7.65 for you, 7.65 for the employer, up to $160,000 and some change in 2023. So if you look at people who are making 200,000, the first 160,000 gets hit with this tax, but above and beyond that, the tax falls off. Some people think, "Well, I got a raise and whatnot," but in reality, it's just all employees get taxed 15.3% in aggregate, or employees, I'm sorry, 7.65, but combined 15.3% up to 160,000. To be fully insured, though, to really get your full benefits, an employee or a worker has to have 40 credits in the system. A credit is simply something you earn for a year, so one per quarter. So short answer is, if you're fully employed for 10 years, you're going to have your Social Security benefits. How much? Well, that's what we'll talk about here in a second. Individuals who are paying FICA taxes and are at least age 60 should begin receiving Social Security benefit statements in the mail about 3 months prior to their birthday. This statement will include your earnings record. That's on page 2. And you should check this carefully because benefits will be based off this record, mistakes and all. It's not uncommon for us to look through a Social Security statement for a client and see a gap year where, like, 6 years prior, it just shows 0. And it's what we have to do in that instance is contact the Social Security office to correct them. And so the sooner you catch that, the sooner you get ahead of it. And so we often encourage our clients just every couple of years to check in and make sure there's nothing misrepresented or misreported on your Social Security statement. The benefits you receive, kind of that top right-hand corner, a lot of you've seen these statements before. The benefits you receive are based on the best 35 years of your work history, and they're reflected on that statement. The income you're expected to receive, you kind of see there, is reflective of the assumption that you'll continue earning your current salary, so your most recent salary kind of at the bottom of that table, for the last 2 years until you begin collecting benefits. And so what you can find sometimes is people make a ton of money at the beginning, and then they go into like what's called a step down retirement at the bottom. And so their income tapers off. In the Social Security Administration, they assume that tapered off income for a prolonged period. But in reality, what they do is they take the best 35 years of your work history, and that's what generates your individual benefits. You should review this information on page 1, like I said, every so often. This is where you'll find your monthly benefit amount. The Social Security Administration has a calculator also on their website, and that'll allow you to modify the expected retirement date, some wage assumptions. So if you anticipate, receiving more income or less income, you can kind of go on their website, or we have tools in our office to kind of help manipulate those and kind of get more accurate ideas of what your benefits may be. The maximum Social Security benefit for a worker in 2023, however, is $3,627 per month. So as you see here, this is individual benefits. This is the trade-offs of individual benefits as far as waiting until 70 or taking it as early as 62. You can kind of see here, it's almost like a Likert scale. The sooner you take it, the bigger the haircut. The longer you delay, the larger the benefits. But you really have the option to start collecting as early as 62 and as late as 70. If you wait until retirement age, you'll get the full benefit amount. And the math is pretty simple. If you're born in 1960 or later, your full retirement age is 67. But as you can see on the bottom of the screen, there's kind of these gap years where it may be between 65 and 67, depending on your birth date. So if we kind of have an idea in our head of reduced benefits being 62 and increased benefits being 67, let's focus on the left-hand side of the screen and talk about reduced benefits for just a moment. What necessarily is the cost of collecting early? So as we saw before on our second slide, the majority of individuals take benefits before their full retirement age. They take them early. If you elect to take benefits early, benefits will be permanently reduced. Okay, this isn't like something you can do and then flip the switch later. I mean, there is kind of a one-time waiver we'll talk about, but by and large, when you pull the trigger on it or you open that faucet, as I like to say, you can't turn it off. If you elect to take benefits early, they'll be permanently reduced, and the payment is not adjusted when you hit 67 or your full retirement age. So what else should you consider before you go ahead and kind of agree to this permanent decision? Well, a lot of factors. What is your spousal income going to look like? Do you have a pension? What does your liquidity look like heading into retirement? These are all factors we need to consider. But by and large, these are the considerations for taking it early. Okay. Family history of longevity, kind of your work history, your current health, your marriage, maybe the age difference between you and your spouse. One extremely important consideration that can influence how we kind of look at Social Security planning is whether or not you're actually retiring. Like, for example, are you grabbing the benefit because you can, or are you grabbing the benefit because you're actually retiring and you need the income? Those questions are very important to kind of think about before you actually step into retirement. If you decide to take it early, right, which it happens, as we can see, statistically speaking, it does, there's a tax and there's a penalty, right? So Social Security benefits are intended to be supplemental retirement income. The Social Security Administration really wants you to be retired when you collect them. Therefore, they'll penalize you for collecting early if you're not actually retired. If you collect benefits early, you'll be subject to annual earnings tests which look exclusively at your salary. Prior to full retirement age, if you earn more than the threshold amount, in 2023, that's only $21,000 and some change, you lose $1 of benefits for every $2 earned above that threshold. Now, keep in mind, this is already on top of having a reduced benefit. For the year in which you reach full retirement age, a different rule applies. The threshold's $56,000 and some change. The rules that you'll lose $1 in benefits for every $3 per earnings above the limit. However, once you reach full retirement age, there's no threshold you can earn to get a reduction in benefits. And so once you hit full retirement age, they're going to kind of halt the penalties. But by and large, any time prior to full retirement age, if you are still working, you can count on quite a bit to being taken out from these earnings limits. Now we're going to touch on taxes a little bit. I'm going to jump ahead. This normally was in a different portion of the presentation, but I think it fits well here. You also may have to pay taxes on your Social Security. If your provisional income is below $25,000 if you're single, or $32,000 if you're married, your benefits are tax-free. If it's above these amounts, like below 34,000 if you're single, or 44,000 you can see on the screen, your benefits could be taxable anywhere between 0 and 50%. If it's above 34,000, you're saying, I'm sorry, if you're married and your benefits could be taxable between 7 and 85%. This is important. If any of your benefits are taxable, you add that amount onto your taxable income for the year and are taxed at your marginal income tax rate. So if they are taxable, you take a portion of that, you add it onto your income, and it goes onto your highest marginal rate at that point in time. So that's a lot. I know we're kind of drinking out of a fire hose covering a lot of information, but some folks take Social Security, and it's not uncommon. They'll meet with us to do their financial plan, and we'll kind of uncover this. Hey, why did we take a reduced benefit? Maybe we didn't need to. you do have the ability to change your mind. If you start collecting benefits prior to full retirement age and you find yourself returning to work or having their benefits withheld, they can consider, or you can consider, what's called a withdrawal of application. It's a one-time do-over. This provision allows only the application withdrawn within the first 12 months after starting your benefits. You then have to repay the benefits and essentially start over. The unlimited do-over provision was prohibited by the Social Security Administration several years ago. When a withdrawal of application is requested, benefit payments will stop and an individual can reapply when they're ready to file again without any reductions due to the filing previously. They just need to repay the Social Security Administration everything they've received year to date, along with any family benefits paid on their work history, and then they can subsequently apply as if for their first time applying. It truly is kind of a get out of jail free card or one-time revision. So that's early. What about taking it late? It's not uncommon, again, for us to say, I'm waiting until 70. I want to get my 8% raise a year. As many of you know, there's a lot of benefits of taking it later, right? So when you delay, every year you delay, you get an 8% increase in your benefits per year, assuming you were born in 1943 or later, up until the age of 70. So for someone with a full retirement age of 67, this could be an increase of 24% in monthly benefits by age 70. For someone with a full retirement age of 66, it could be as much as 32% by age 70. So waiting until 70 can have positive impacts on your financial plan, if and when you decide to delay, because we need the monthly income. We'll kind of talk about like total monthly income versus total lifetime income. If you're a client of mine and Candace's, I know we've kind of talked about this in our financial planning meetings, but it's important to kind of revisit nonetheless. But this is the age-old question. This next slide is what we get asked about all the time. We deliver plenty of presentations on this, and it involves a little bit of playing God. So the next question is about longevity. When do I take Social Security? When is the optimal time to take Social Security? The tricky part of that is, in order to really answer that question, you have to know exactly how long you'll live. So I often joke with clients, like when I do their financial plans, I'll say, hey, I'm going to play God now, and at 90, we're going to, like The Notebook, die peaceably together in a nursing home somewhere, or hopefully at home. But nevertheless, in order to kind of understand like what's the right method or mode of operation to take Social Security, you got to know how long you'll live. But by doing so, you can kind of compare payment plans and determine a break-even point that allows you to make a more informed decision. Whether you start receiving lower benefits early or waiting and collecting a higher benefit amount later, at some point you're going to break even, which means you'll receive the same amount of money no matter when you started collecting. In the first example, the break-even analysis shows collecting at age 62 versus versus collecting at full retirement age. And in this example, the break-even point's the age 78 and 6 months, or 78.5 months. In the second example, as you can see in the green, it's full retirement age versus 70, and the break-even there is 82 and 6 months. So if you think you're going to live well beyond 82 and 6 months, you might want the larger paycheck at 70. But if you have a family health history or medical history, which suggests maybe in your mid to early 70s, then we could take it an earlier date and time. There's other variables at play, such as like, what do you do with the money? There's plenty of our clients who take the Social Security and they have it deposited into an investment account, and that investment or their brokerage account is growing at a certain rate. And so that's another variable we can kind of talk about later. So to be a buzzkill, it's really impossible to know exactly how long you'll live. But based on family medical history and kind of going back and forth in dialogue with you guys as clients, we can make a reasonable guess about your current health and hopefully make a decision that's more informed for you guys, so you can ultimately get the most out of the Social Security system as possible. What we're really focused on is the total amount you can receive over your lifetime, not always necessarily the most you can receive per month. Okay. So now I'm going to hand it over to Candace. She's going to talk about what we call like couples benefits, or using combinations of benefits, and ultimately how to use that to impact your financial health going forward.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. So the next thing that we're going to look at, to his point was the rules of retirement benefits. There's like a baseline of what we need to work off of. And so the next section we're going to look at, while he touched on individual, I'm going to speak to spousal, survivor, divorced, government pension offsets, and also the windfall elimination provision. And while we're going to lay out the baseline and the rules, there's multiple strategies that we can apply to those, but we need to understand where the rules come from first. And so we'll talk about the strategies later on. All right, so let's jump on in. Let's see. Jim, are you able to move the slide?
Oh,
there we go.
yeah.
So to begin, let's look at spousal benefit amounts. Now, if we're going to do so, we're going to see that we have Jordan, who's the earner, and Alex, who has never earned. So she stayed at home, raised a family, become the CEO of their family household. With that being said, we're going to make the assumption all the way through my slides that they are of the same age, in which their full retirement age would be considered at 67. Okay, so let's take a look at a sample married couple. Like I said, Jordan and Alex. Jordan was the one who worked, and his primary insurance amount is $2,200. Let me back up for a second. There's going to be two terms that you're going to constantly heard, throughout the conversation that are going to be tossed out there. So full retirement age is FRA. The PI, yeah, just stay on the first one. There you go. The PIA, which we refer to, it's actually the dollar amount that you would have received at full retirement age. So if FRA is age, PIA is the dollar amount that you would receive at FRA. Okay, so let's say Alex did not work and did not pay into Social Security for at least 10 years, and therefore has a PIA of 0. There are 4 key things to make sure you know about spousal benefits. First, a spousal benefit is always going to be equal to 50% of their partner's PIA once that they receive their full retirement age. So say for instance, like Alex can apply for a spousal benefit once Jordan, against Jordan's benefit once Alex is 67. I don't know if we're going to clear that up. Because Jordan has a PIA of $2,200, once Alex reaches her full retirement age at 67, the spousal benefit is equal to half of that, or $1,100. So at FRA, Jordan could get a check for $2,200 every month, and Alex could receive the spousal of $1,100 per month. Okay. Our next scenarios is we're looking at, well, what about spousal benefits if Jordan was to claim at 62? It's important to make sure that you understand that spousal benefits is equal to 50% of Jordan's PIA and not 50% of the benefit that's being collected. So if his PIA is achieved at 67, but he begins taking Social Security early at 62, his benefit is reduced, but her spousal won't be reduced if she applies for it when she reaches FRA. So, there's no benefit for her to go ahead and start claiming early. Like we need her to get her full amount, which would be achieved at FRA. Okay. The second key thing to know about a spousal benefit is that when Alex collects her spousal, it can impact the total that she takes home. So if she collects spousal benefits before FRA, her spousal benefit will be reduced. On the other hand, she is not rewarded for waiting beyond FRA. Spousal benefits do not receive like delayed retirement credits. So there's no incentive for her to wait and to collect spousal beyond that full retirement age. And you can see that here illustrated in the graph. If she chooses to take it early because Jordan started taking it early, it is going to be significantly reduced. But once she hits FRA, it's always going to be like 100% of that potential benefit. Third, Jordan must file for his benefit in order for Alex to be able to collect her spousal. So if he decides to delay his benefit election, then she can't file for spousal until he does so. So even though Jordan's benefit will be higher, hers will always just be 50% of what his would have been had he started it at 67. Okay, next slide. There we go. In the previous example, the couple had a higher earner and a much lower earner. But what really happens if both spouses have relatively similar benefits at FRA? Remember, an individual is only eligible for either their own benefit or 50% of their spouse's benefit. So whichever is higher, but they can't receive both. Therefore, neither will be eligible for like spousal benefits. They will only be eligible for their individual benefits since both of their benefits exceed 50% of their spouse's PIA. And then what you'll see here is now we're going to jump on over into survivor benefits. And survivor benefits they're treated much differently than spousal benefits are. And so if we're talking about survivor benefits and why they're so important and the decision that is made is because approximately half of all the women collecting benefits today are collecting benefits all or in part based on their husband's work history. So the decisions for Jordan to when he elects to choose and take his benefits will most likely impact Alex's benefits even after he's gone. So whereas before spousal is about taking 50% of when Jordan reaches full retirement age, survivor benefits are different because those are going to look at if Jordan goes ahead and he decides to file at 70, the survivor benefit to Alex will be what he achieved by delaying and actually taking advantage of those delayed credits. Okay, next slide, Jim. If you've been married for at least 10 years and are currently unmarried, and both you and your ex-spouse are at least the age of 62, you may be eligible for spousal benefits under the same rules as we discussed earlier when it comes to divorced spouses. And that's for the spousal side. On the survivor side, if your ex-spouse has passed away and you're unmarried, or your current marriage started after the age of 60, you may be eligible for survivor benefits. And so, a lot of times people will say, well, I'm on my second marriage. If my ex-spouse applies for benefits, does that affect my benefits? Or does it affect my current spouse's benefits? And the answer is no, they don't. So the survivor can go ahead and apply for benefits, and you really won't even know because the spousal benefit and your individual benefit is not affected by it. Okay. So the WEP provision really pertains to those that worked in a civil capacity. Like we think about teachers and how they have paid into the TRS system. And this is where you see this come up. So, most teachers, the way that it's structured is they don't pay into Social Security. However, their spouse may have paid into Social Security. So when we look at the windfall elimination provision, this is really about how it could reduce your own personal benefits. So if I'm the teacher, it's going to affect my personal Social Security benefits. Most people don't come straight out of school and go into teaching. What they may do is go into the private sector and actually pay into Social Security for a certain amount of time. That Social Security amount that they've earned, though, will be affected if they do go into teaching, and that's where they spend the large majority of their working career, and that's where this comes into play. But once, the WEP provision is actually phased out for individuals who have had like substantial earnings that were covered by Social Security between 20 to 30 years. And that's what you're going to see here. So assume that this person started working at age 22 and by 32, now they've paid in enough to Social Security that they qualify for Social Security. And if they continue to work for the next 30 years and like as a teacher, once that occurs, then that means that they can do their get their Social Security benefit and still get their TRS pension in 100% of both. You'll see there's two equations right underneath that, and not to harp more into the WEP provision because it is quite substantial, is the first equation shows you how the PIA is actually computed for those that have just paid into Social Security and worked in the private sector. The WEP PIA is calculated in a different way. And really, if you're falling victim to WEP, the only substantial change that you'll see in the WEP, how the WEP PIA is actually structured, is that first 40% of the average monthly income that is at 40% versus at the PIA at 90%. And there are several other rules that go into taking this two steps further to actually determine what that WEP is going to look at. But we can look at that on an individual basis for you guys if this is something that you will fall victim to. The next slide talks about the government pension offset. And while the WEP looks at how it affects your own personal earnings, the GPO actually looks at how it's going to reduce your spousal or your survivor benefits. And when we look at that, some employees, like usually like civil service employees, they don't pay into Social Security, but rather they pay into like a civil retirement system. And since their years of employment would not be recognized by Social Security as a result of this, you would be entitled to receive spousal and survivor benefits. Social Security will offset those benefits, however, as a result of your civil pension. With that being said, you would reduce any spousal or survivor benefits by 2/3 of your social pension. So you would receive your full civil pension and any additional spousal benefits if you exceeded 2/3 of your pension. So what that means is, say for instance, I'm working for the federal government and I'm not paying in Social Security in this particular position. And so my pension is going to be $1,500. Well, what the GPO says is that, it asks, well, how much do I actually qualify when it comes to survivor benefits? And they said, well, you have to back out 2/3 of whatever the offset is. So you multiply 1,500 by 2/3, you get $1,000 offset. So if my survivor benefit that I would have claimed would be $2,200, now I've got to reduce that by the 1,000. And so if you look at the spousal side, you're only getting 50% of what your spouse was making. And so if the spousal side at FRA, I would have been getting $1,100. Well, now I need to back that down to $100 to take off the offset. See, one more thing before I leave. Okay. Okay. We're going to hold everything for questions at the end because I know that there's a lot of information that we've just sent your direction. But with that, I'm going to send it back over to Jim.
Is my microphone? All right. Thank you so much, Candace. I know, guys, that's very technical, but it's really important. I mean, this is what we often call like a foundational piece of your financial plan, because what we are all about in its simplest form is making y'all's lives easier and making your retirement plans as tax efficient and as low cost as possible. So oftentimes when we create a tax efficient withdrawal plan for clients, what we're doing is, as you know, we kind of beat this drum of we're wanting copies of your tax returns, but what we're really trying to do is gauge how much of a baseline income are we getting for Social Security? What can we supplement on top of that with pre-tax withdrawals? So these are IRAs, 401ks, 403bs. These are pre-tax accounts. So for all of our clients, if we can find out what your Social Security baseline income is going to be, we can then determine how much to pull out of your pre-tax bucket. That's going to allow us to kind of have a baseline income for retirement planning. And then if we have the ability to then pull off non-retirement accounts like brokerage accounts, we can kind of manipulate capital gains and capital losses if they're available to us. And so when you take $1,000 gain and you take $1,000 loss and you put them together, it's a $0 tax bill. And then we supplement all those things with maybe Roth money, which is tax-free as well. So in a perfect world, we want our clients living X amount, dollar lifestyles, but the IRS thinking you only make a fraction of that if we can kind of do proper tax planning. But a big baseline there, again, it's foundational, is understanding how your Social Security plays into your income in retirement. So what we're going to talk about now are some different collection strategies that are pretty common for a lot of folks we meet with. At the bottom of the screen, you kind of see these different, both age 62, both full retirement age, both 70, and then the ultimate strategy we're going to go with. And so in this scenario, we've got Jordan and Alex. Jordan's born in 1960. Alex is born in 1960. Jordan's go live to 75. Alex lived to 84. But you see that PIA amount that Candace alluded to. This is the monthly income they would be receiving through Social Security at their full retirement age. Okay, so we can kind of see that clearly. And this is a strategy we want to talk about. So if they both took it at 62, in this situation, they'd make over their lifespan, between 75 and 84, they'd make about 580 grand. If they both waited to full retirement age, they'd make about 594,000. But if they waited until 70 and they got that 8% ratchet a year, they'd make about 570,000. Last lever, what if they were a little more creative? And what if they took a portion of individual benefits, and then we collect a spousal somewhere down the road? What could happen there? And that's where we see here. So in this scenario, what we often find is for a couple where one couple is has a lower earning work history, you can use a strategy where, yes, one person takes the reduced benefit at 62, knowing somewhere down the road they're going to pivot and flip and take what's called their spousal benefit. And so we can squeeze as much of the system over their lifespan, right? So Alex begins collecting reduced benefit of $420 at 62 years old. And at 70, once Jordan begins collecting his benefit of $27.28, again, it was going to be $2,200, but he waited. Alex can begin receiving her additional $500 a month in spousal. This results in Alex receiving $420 a month from 62 to 70, and then $920 a month after that. Okay. This strategy approach will provide the greatest amount of benefits over your lifetime. Will this always be the case? Absolutely not. It's going to depend on the numbers, your life expectancy, other variables at play. But the higher the lower earners numbers are when longevity is present, the more advantageous it becomes to have both to defer to 70. So now we're going to take the same scenario, but we're going to stretch their lifespan. Jordan's now going to live to 85 from 75. Alex lives to 92. When you think of compound interest, which we know is a very real principle, and we say, what if we just delayed their lifespan? What if we had them live longer to when, statistically speaking, is more likely for couples nowadays? You can see the effects there. From 810,000 to 937 to 964 to 969. Both 70 and this strategy are pretty close. But what this scenario, that, as you know, we're very conservative, what we haven't factored in are cost of living adjustments or any of this money being invested into their brokerage accounts. If they, for whatever reason, have a supplement or something like that, there's no growth kind of embedded in these numbers, which I think is a very real component that a lot of our clients kind of implement in their financial plans. Another thing to talk about, like Candace touched on, was widows with lower individual benefits. Another time to switch between benefits is when you are a widower and maybe you're entitled to survivor benefits and you have a good size benefits on your own as well. In this scenario, we have Chris. His PIA is 1,000, but his survivor benefits would be $2,500, and we're going to have Chris live to 92. So in this scenario, should Chris's survivor benefit exceed her individual benefit, she could file for his reduced benefit at age 62, as you can kind of see there, and then file for the full survivor at full retirement age. Keep in mind, survivor benefits are just like spousal benefits in that they never increase past the full retirement age. Therefore, if you're a survivor, your benefit will always be more than your individual benefit should you never wait past full retirement age to file. So there's really no there's no benefit in delaying on those, just like you would with spousal. And so we're going to have Chris in this scenario take it to 67. And you can see this scenario at the bottom, taking it 62, full retirement age 70, or the strategy we're recommending. That's a substantial difference. I mean, we're talking, over 6 figures of a difference just by incorporating this strategy over his lifespan. So how does this impact you guys? Obviously, there's a lot of variables at play, but what we want to talk about here is what we do at Aspen is we take kind of all the principles we've talked about and we play God a little bit. And so for our couples or clients who are getting closer to retirement, we use what's called a Social Security benefits estimator. We can use the Social Security Administration's website, but this is a tool from BlackRock that we really like, and really allows us to kind of manipulate a lot of variables. As you can see in the top of the screen here, let me zoom in on my side. We've got, this is actually this is a couple that I've actually worked with here at Aspen. Now I've changed their demographic and name information for privacy reasons, but you can kind of see here, this is an actual client here at Aspen and what their situation looked like. And at the very bottom, you can kind of see if we have them both living to 90, or I'm sorry, you'll see husband's information and wife's on the right. They're both 67 years old. One had about a $3,200 a month benefit. One is $1,100. I included a cost of living adjustment from the Social Security office at 2%. You can kind of see in real world how these scenarios might play out over their lifespans. And so if they both took it at 62, we have the benefit at the bottom. Let me view my screen. Go. Oh, sorry. And so if we took it at 62, let me see here. I apologize. My screen is not zooming in, so I want to make sure y'all can see it. So if they both took it at 62, we're looking at about 1.6 million in benefits. If they took it at their full retirement ages, we're looking at 2 million, both at 70, 2.1 million, and using kind of a hybrid approach, 2.2 million. So it could be about what is that, about a $60,000 difference over the lifespan, not including any investment returns, should we invest that money. There's no way of knowing exactly if, like your actual date of death or things like that. But what we do is use very conservative lifespan projections for all of our clients. And hopefully that data, leads us to more maybe educated and informed decisions about when to take Social Security so that we can get the most out of your lifetime. So where do we go from here? If you haven't done so already, or if it's been a while, maybe a few years, I'd encourage you all to go to the Social Security Administration, ssa.gov, and download your statement. Send us a copy, upload it in your vault into eMoney, and we'd be happy to review that with you and maybe talk about projections or refresh your projections. We, unlike some of the accounts you have, a lot of y'all link your bank accounts or your 401ks or things to your eMoney portal with Aspen. We do not have the ability to link anything from the SSA.gov. So we're at the mercy of you guys refreshing us with that data every so often. So if you could download that statement and get us a copy, we'd greatly appreciate that so we can include it in your plan. When you decide and when we decide the most appropriate time to file for benefits it's pretty simple. You go online, you click on SSA.gov on the benefits and retirement, you simply apply for benefits. As we talked about earlier, an overwhelming majority of people take them early, and this is why. It's pretty easy. So that's doing it online. If we're going to use a creative approach, if we have a government pension offset or one of these other strategies that Candace talked about where you might have had some public service work in the past, we oftentimes recommend setting an appointment at the Social Security office just to kind of go and review. They'll ask you to bring your pension documents, your Social Security information, your spouse's, and we really want to make sure we know exactly where everything stands because some of these provisions are a little more technical in nature, and we'd be happy to kind of review that with you or prepare for that meeting and schedule that for you if you'd like. Lastly, you can do it over the phone. You simply call their number, 800-772-1213, and you schedule an appointment online to file for benefit or over the phone to file for benefits. But just to be frank, we always encourage options 1 or 2. Lastly, a lot of people are asking, it's a pretty common question, where does the Social Security Administration stand? Like, when are they going to run out of money? It's not uncommon, or will it be there when I need it? So for our clients who are 35 or 45 and they're growing, do we even want to include Social Security in their plan? No, we do. Our belief, and this is not just Aspen's, this is belief from large institutions like BlackRock and Vanguard and Dimensional Funds and the academics of this world. It's shocking how little the Social Security Administration, the IRS, and TANF have to manipulate to kind of prolong the pool. Right now, as we talked about, the wage base is $160,200. They could obviously raise that to $165,000. They don't have to move too many levers to kind of kick the can of Social Security down the road. So for all of our clients who are at or near retirement, I wouldn't be concerned in the slightest about the money being there for you when you need it. For our folks who are maybe 35 or 45, like I talked about, and your financial plans will often include it and exclude it depending on your preference. But regardless, in any of your financial plans, we use a very conservative number of 1% for inflation across the board. I mean, the last increase was 8% and some change, right? And so historically, they'll give 2% what they call COLAs or cost of living adjustments. But just to be ultra conservative, we use 1% in perpetuity. We hope we're woefully low on that number and that they adjust it upwards from there. But just to be safe and make sure your plans are, strong and well put together and they have those conservative estimates in there, we do use 1% going forward in perpetuity. So Candace is going to, if you might have noticed already, she has the ability to start, we're going to go ahead and start turning your cameras and your microphones on. And what we'll do there is we're going to open up for questions. We'd encourage you guys to maybe stop and ask questions. I'm going to turn off the screen sharing here in a second, so it'll just be Candace and I facing you guys. But I'm going to go forward and start slowly kind of opening the cameras and microphones for y'all to ask questions. This webinar is kind of tricky. I have to do it kind of one by one, so it might take me a minute. But if you could take a moment to just kind of gather your thoughts or any questions you might have, and Candace and I would love to spend the next 10 to 15 minutes with you guys just kind of talking through all this information. Just one second. Carl, yeah, this will be available on replay. And if you can, I know some of you guys, we don't want to include the cameras and stuff. If y'all want to go ahead and include your questions in the Q&A forum, we'd love to answer those for you right now, just like Carl did. Thank you, Carl. Or I'm sorry, that's in the chat feature where he's asking questions. So if you can use the chat or the Q&A, we're happy to field them in either one.
And feel free to email us separately because everybody's situation is so very unique.
Yeah, Cameron, I'm going to go ahead and turn your microphone on. So thank you for asking a question. All right, Cameron, you should be good to go.
See, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when there's a spouse and main age earner who are, let's say, 3 years apart, do you recommend that the spouse takes the spousal benefits when the primary earner hits FRA or when the spouse hits FRA? I got confused with that.
So you can't take spousal benefits until the primary earner reaches or starts collecting their own benefits. You can take your own benefit once you hit FRA, and then when the spouse begins to take their benefit, you can then switch to spousal benefits.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Great question.
Yeah, Stacy, unfortunately, the BlackRock tool is available to us. As they call it, essentially BlackRock Institutional for advisors. But we have if you send us any information, we'll be happy to kind of send you a report of what it looks like. The key questions or inputs they're going to ask for are really your dates of birth, your pull stuff from the SSA statement. So your full benefit amount at age 67, your dates of birth, were you a government employee, things about the pension benefit offset, things of that nature, or the WEP provision. So we'd be happy to kind of do that for you, but unfortunately, no, that's not able to retail customers at this point in time. Thanks, Stacy. Does anyone else have any other questions, or has this information been really helpful to you guys today? Thanks, guys. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one last time, just so you can see our contact information. I know a lot of you guys are clients here at Aspen, but some aren't. And so what I'd like to do is at the very end kind of provide our contact information just so you have it. So our Website, aspenwealthmgmt.com. The phone number, 817-546-6353. My email is jim@aspenwealth. It's just like the website, jim@aspenwealthmgmt.com. And Candace's is candace@aspenwealthmgmt.com. Thank you guys so much for taking the time. We really appreciate y'all. And this will be available as a recording so we can push it out and you can send it to friends, loved ones, or have it on for background noise. I'm sure it was very enticing information. So
I will tell you that we do nerd out on these types of things. So please send us your statements and give us your questions, and we can get back with a unique structure for each of you. Thank y'all for attending.
Thank you guys. Have a great day.